The moment I knew something was off was when I passed Lucas in the break room and saw him microwaving a cup of black coffee at 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday. No lunch, no chatter, no glance in anyone's direction. Just that damn mug he always used. One chipped corner. Audit like you mean it in faded blue. Most people thought Lucas was harmless, a relic. Brent, the new ops manager, had called him Y2K left behind more than once in meetings, like it was clever. But what Brent didn't realize, and what made my stomach knot every time I saw Lucas scribbling in that tiny leather notebook, was that Lucas didn't just file the paperwork. He was the paperwork. He never raised his voice, never corrected anyone in meetings. But there were quiet things. The way he carried a key fob separate from his badge, how he triple signed vendor logs, how IT always took longer with his workstation, like there were extra encryption layers nobody talked about. One day, I saw him slide a navy binder back into his desk drawer and turn the lock with his left hand while typing a timestamp with his right. The label on the spine was handwritten in pen, block letters. Attestation Authority, sealed. He caught me looking and gave me a polite nod. That was it. No smile, no warmth. Just the chill of someone who knew exactly how fragile everything around him really was. If you're still listening at this point, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button and tap the like icon. It genuinely helps the team keep these stories coming. You'd be surprised how many listen without supporting, and your click keeps us going. Brent, for all his faux alpha nonsense, had zero clue what Lucas did. He strutted around in his fitted shirts and startup sneakers, waving his iPad like it was Excalibur, slashing through departments with the phrase, streamline and optimize like a toddler with a machete. During one leadership sync, I watched Brent wave off Lucas's quarterly log review like it was a damn Girl Scout flyer. Thanks, Lucas, he said, not even glancing up from his screen. But we're shifting toward operational agility, less paper shuffling. You get it, right? Lucas just nodded, closed his file, and walked out. He didn't get flustered, didn't say a word. But the next day, I noticed the compliance room was locked from the inside for 4 hours. When it opened, Lucas stepped out holding a small USB drive in a tamper-evident bag, sealed, labeled, time-stamped. People underestimated him because he didn't play the game. He skipped happy hours. He declined those stupid team-building trust falls and trivia workshops. He didn't slack emojis or say, let's circle back. But Lucas had access no one else did. And more importantly, authority no one understood. Brent could mock his administrative function all he wanted. Lucas held the keys to the archive, the master sign-off chain, and something no one had dared ask about directly, the federal compliance trail. I'd overheard snippets before, that Lucas was the officially attested custodian of record for a set of high-clearance integration logs tied to the Department of Infrastructure's modernization contracts, over $300 million worth. People in legal whispered it like ghost stories. How every quarter, the regulator expected a single signed certification. Lucas's name was on it. No proxy, no delegation. But Brent didn't care. He was too busy making color-coded org charts and tossing buzzwords like they were candy. He saw Lucas as just another box on the cost column, another line to delete, and Lucas? He never argued. Never defended his place. He just kept logging, locking, and signing, and every time he did, I felt this low-grade hum in my chest, like something seismic was buried under our feet and everyone just kept dancing above it. Brent didn't waste time pretending to observe. By week 3, he was already gutting departments like he was speedrunning a budget simulator. The first email came in hot on a Monday. Reorg, Phase 1, streamlining towards strategic focus. That was Brent's gift, dressing up a guillotine in pastel PowerPoint slides. By noon, legacy roles in logistics and procurement were sunsetted. By Wednesday, the whispers started. Legal was on edge, audit wasn't looped in on a vendor review, and someone from contracts had their badge deactivated mid-call. Still, Brent strutted around like a man who thought LinkedIn comments counted as strategic victories. The kicker came during Thursday's leadership huddle. Brent brought out this laminated flowchart with neon arrows and boxes labeled Core Ops and Non-Mission Critical. He pointed at one, then glanced around the table like a game show host about to drop the punchline. Let's be real, he said. grinning at his own reflection in the glass wall. Lucas's logs are the bureaucratic glue nobody uses. Compliance is a cost center, not a strategy. Nobody laughed, but nobody pushed back either. I looked over at Lucas, seated at the far end of the table like he always was. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just kept his hands folded over a plain manila folder, the same kind he always carried, like a soldier carrying classified orders no one asked about. After the meeting, I caught him standing outside the elevator, watching the LED numbers flick down. "He doesn't get it," I said, my voice low. He didn't even turn, just murmured. "He doesn't have to. Time takes care of people like Brent." The next day, Lucas wasn't on the invite for the quarterly compliance planning session. First time in 11 years. No explanation. Just left off. I knew because I was in the room, and the chair he always took, third from the door, closest to the outlet, was empty. Brent ran the session like a guy trying to assemble IKEA furniture from memory. He barked phrases like lean optimization and vendor agility. But it was clear no one in the room understood where the federal audit trail even started. Someone asked about attestation scheduling. Brent waved it off. "We'll plug someone in later. It's just a form." Lucas wasn't even mentioned. The real shift happened Friday morning. A mass email hit inboxes titled Ops Optimization Survey, Confidential. We were asked to evaluate peer roles based on perceived criticality, cost, and strategic alignment. No context, no definitions. Just a spreadsheet with columns and drop-downs, names of our own coworkers, ours included. Brent called it a non-essential roles audit. I called it what it was, a slow bleed dressed up as teamwork. Lucas didn't comment, but by lunch, I saw him removing a small lockbox from under his desk. He placed it inside a messenger bag and calmly walked it down to records. No rush, no secrecy. But when I asked later what it was, the records clerk just said, Legacy Credential Kit, Chain of Custody Protocol. I asked if that meant he was being offboarded. She frowned. No, but he's prepping like someone else is. They called him in at 4:32 on a Friday like cowards, not even the decency of a full hour to pack up or process. I saw it happen. I was on my way to refill my water bottle when Lucas walked past me, holding nothing but his badge and that same manila folder. Brent trailed behind him like a smug terrier, nodding to HR like this was just another checkbox on his masterclass in corporate efficiency. No heads up, no transition memo, just poof, erased. The meeting didn't even last 10 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. By 4:41, Lucas was back in the hallway, eyes calm, shoulders square, holding a white envelope stamped exit package. Die-ops. He paused by the elevator, looked down at the envelope once, and tucked it inside his folder like it was a grocery list. No tears, no protest, just that unnerving silence he always carried, like he was waiting for gravity to catch up with everybody else. Brent strutted out a few seconds later, high-fiving some junior staffer like he'd just brokered world peace. "Gotta make room for growth," he said, loud enough for everyone in the admin pod to hear. "Can't let legacy weight drag down innovation." And then he was gone, slamming his office door like punctuation. I wanted to ask Lucas if he was okay, but the moment passed before I could. He made his way to his desk with surgical precision. No frantic sweeping of drawers, no emotional theatrics. Just 3 things into his bag: the leather notebook, a tamper-evident envelope from the locked drawer, and a black USB key with a blue security tag. HR never looked twice. They just handed him the generic offboarding folder, still half blank inside. I know, because I peeked at the one left on my desk last year when layoffs hit facilities. It's a templated joke, section headers like system credentials and asset transfer log, and compliance sign-off sheet with little checkboxes no one ever really fills. Except in Lucas's case, those missing check marks weren't just bureaucratic noise, they were landmines. Brent skipped it all, didn't request asset inventory, didn't assign a transitional authority for compliance, didn't even ask where the attestation keys were stored. To him, Lucas was just a headcount cut. Dead weight deleted. He thought termination was a control move. Lucas didn't say a word, not one. But 2 minutes after walking out of HR, he sat in the cafe downstairs, opened his laptop, and pulled up his inbox. I know because I passed behind him on my way out. He wasn't even hiding it. just calmly composing an email with the subject line: Term Notice, Compliance Custodian Record. Recipients: legal@delacour.com and one more CC'd name I couldn't make out, but the domain wasn't ours. Attached: the exit folder PDF, unsigned checklist, blank compliance transfer form, and his badge, photo timestamped next to the sealed records room. Then he hit send, closed his laptop, zipped his bag, and walked out of Delacour like a man stepping off a sinking ship he'd already warned the captain about. We didn't realize it then, but Lucas hadn't just left the building. He'd pulled the thread that was about to unravel everything. The email hit the legal inbox at 4:58 p.m. Friday. 13 words in the body, no emotional language, just facts. Subject line clean as a scalpel. Custodial attestation not executed, no continuity authorization present. Logs inaccessible. Most of legal was already gone for the weekend, except one. Hannah Klein, junior associate, 2 years out of law school and still green enough to skim emails on a Friday night. She read it once, then again. Then opened the attachments and went completely still. She knew Lucas by name. Everyone in legal did. He was the guy whose signature gave their contracts teeth. Clausa 14.7b, buried deep in the federal compliance appendix, was his whole ecosystem. Custodian of record must affirm continuity of authority and sealed log integrity prior to role reassignment or termination. Failure to obtain attestation may result in breach classification and trigger audit escalation under Section 22 of Contract FDIC DX 017. She wasn't even supposed to be looking at that clause, but the checklist Lucas attached was still blank. No signatures, no digital handoff, no backup custodian named. And that one little file he embedded, a simple .dat packet with a time lock hash, showed the logs had been sealed and transferred after he was fired, which meant they were out of compliance. Not in a theoretical sense, not in a we'll fix it Monday kind of way, in a regulators will ask for this and I'll have nothing kind of way. Hannah emailed her supervisor, then her supervisor's supervisor. Then she called Mitch from contracts at 9:17 p.m. By 10:12, General Counsel was on a Zoom call with the entire compliance legal team. The screen glowed white as Clause 14.7b was blown up in bold font, and someone said, "Who signed the logs for Q2 continuity?" Silence. Then, it was Lucas. Did Brent assign a backup? No. Was the offboarding checklist completed? He skipped it. That's when it shifted. Lucas wasn't just a fired analyst anymore. He was now the key to a locked vault holding every log that mattered. Logs bound to federal infrastructure contracts. The kind where incomplete documentation doesn't mean a slap on the wrist. It means millions in clawbacks, blacklisting, and potential criminal review. Someone from legal asked if IT could override the log access. They tried. The system rejected all credentials except Lucas's secure key, which had been marked inactive, but not reassigned. An auto message pinged back. Custodial signature missing. Chain of authority broken. The room went cold. They called in a data forensics consultant, hoping to mirror the log server or fake a continuity packet. But the platform had integrity checks, built by Lucas himself 2 years ago when a contractor tried to backdate a security clearance. The irony was thick. Brent had fired the one guy who knew how to unlock the thing they now desperately needed unlocked. By Sunday morning, legal had compiled a 10-page brief marked urgent and sent it to the CEO's private address. The subject line was red-tagged. Breach exposure, custodial error, FDIC DEX 017. No one had slept. No one even dared say the word retract out loud. But the question hung there anyway, whispered, acidic in everyone's mind. What happens when the one person you said wasn't mission critical turns out to be the only person who can keep the mission alive? The letter came in through the encrypted portal at 8:06 a.m., time-stamped, sealed and flagged urgent, contract at risk. It was addressed directly to Delacour's CEO, Stephen Marius, with a CC to the company's designated compliance liaison and, most damning of all, the federal auditor assigned to the FDIC DX 017 contract. One glance at the subject line was enough to sink the air out of the boardroom. Notice of concern. Attestation chain. Custodian of record missing. The meeting that was supposed to be about Q4 projections turned into a silent war room. Nobody touched their coffee. The CEO skimmed the body once, then again, jaw tightening with each paragraph. At the center of it all, Lucas Hartman. Specifically, the absence of Lucas Hartman's signature on the Q2, Q3 continuity logs, and the lack of any transitional documentation verifying custodial reassignment. Brent leaned back like he was still in control, wearing his usual cocky half-smirk. "We've got all that," he said, waving the letter off like it was a parking ticket. "Probably just a timing thing. We can clarify. Send over a quick memo, loop in IT, and call it procedural drift." The general counsel, Ms. Yan, didn't speak immediately. She let Brent hang in the silence he'd created, and when she finally leaned forward, her voice was almost too soft to hear. "You don't understand," she said, eyes fixed on the red seal at the bottom of the page. "Lucas signed everything. Everything. You didn't deactivate his credential through proper revocation channels. The termination was not accompanied by a custodial handoff or assigned attestation. You left a live federal control record unverified and unsecured." Brent's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a man tasting his own mistake for the first time. "Okay, but," he started. Ms. Yan cut him off with a glance. "No, you fired the one person legally required to close the chain of record. This isn't a memo problem, Brent. This is breach territory." The CEO stood up, silent, hands on his hips, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows like the city might offer a solution if he just squinted hard enough. "What exactly are they threatening?" he asked, voice tight. Yan flipped a page. "Failure to provide custodial attestation by the named signatory within the specified window triggers automatic escalation, back audits, contract hold, possible financial penalties pending investigation, and if the logs were altered after the termination timestamp, which Lucas's email implies, they could classify it as falsification." The room was so quiet, you could hear the HVAC cycling overhead. Then Brent, visibly rattled now, tried to summon his usual bravado. "But we can just get Lucas to sign now, right? I mean, he doesn't want to blow up the company." Yan didn't answer right away. Then, "You didn't ask him that before you cut him loose, and if you're banking on his goodwill, you clearly never understood who you were dealing with." For the first time since he'd walked in with his startup buzzwords and performance sneakers, Brent looked small, not cornered yet, but starting to understand that the walls were real. The CEO turned from the window and pointed at the letter. "Get me options. All of them. Now. And find Lucas." Yan nodded once. Already on it. Brent didn't speak again. Not for the rest of the meeting. He just sat there, watching his name get slowly peeled off the whiteboard, like a sticker that no longer stuck. By noon, legal was in triage mode. A war room had been set up in Conf Room 14B, lights low, blinds drawn, laptops open, caffeine bleeding from every cup holder. The plan was unspoken but clear. Mitigate, sanitize, contain. If they could just clean up the active logs, reassign signatures retroactively, and scrub the metadata, maybe they could present a revised trail that passed muster in a surface-level audit. They pulled up the sealed compliance packets from the central vault. 4 sets were intact. One was flagged with a red hash mismatch. Someone whispered, "Just pull it. Reroute through ops, repackage, and backdate. Nobody cross-checks internal timestamps unless they're digging." It was the kind of casual fraud that gets rationalized in moments of panic. Someone rolled the shredder over from records. A stack of hard copy printouts sat beside it. Transaction logs, credential snapshots, time of sign-off records. Brent wasn't in the room. He'd made a big show of giving legal room to breathe, but really, he didn't want to be there when they started doctoring his disaster. Then it happened. Midway through feeding the first packet through the machine, Hannah, the same junior associate who'd caught clause 14.7b, froze. "Wait, stop." Everything halted. The shredder was half-fed, blades humming softly, waiting. She pointed at a compliance seal on the second document set, dated 2 hours after Lucas had been terminated. The signature at the bottom? Lucas Hartman, identical ink, time-stamped, digitally verified. The attestation key matched his original hash. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then, "That's not possible." Wasn't he? Yes, he was already gone. Someone reached for the paper, flipping it over. The metadata record at the bottom, federal format, not internal, indicated the seal had been processed through a compliance terminal that only Lucas had access to, meaning either he'd done it after being removed from the system, or someone used his credentials after he was fired. Someone whispered. Silence dropped like a bomb. Jan stared at the paper like it might bite her. If this seal was applied post-termination, it implies one of two things. 1. Lucas still had live access, which puts us in breach of access control protocols. 2. Someone else used his credentials, which is falsification of a federal log. She turned toward the shredded pile, now half fed through the machine. And either way, we've just tampered with evidence. She waved them off the shredder like it was wired to explode. Pull every packet. We're doing a full forensic sweep. No more cleanup, no more editing. I want chain of custody on every log since the day Lucas was terminated. The temperature in the room dropped by 10 degrees. They sent for IT, internal audit, even a third-party compliance contractor to verify integrity. No one was breathing right anymore. The cleanup plan wasn't just dead, it had become radioactive. By 3:18 p.m., the CEO stepped into the room. His face was gray. "Where are we?" he asked. Jan handed him the sheet with the post-firing seal. "He signed this after you let him go. We don't know how." The CEO scanned the line, then looked up. What was he trying to prove? Jan didn't blink. That we'd come for the shredder before we ever came for the truth. He stared at the paper a moment longer, then handed it back. Find out exactly what he left behind. Every file, every signature, every audit flag. I want nothing touched until we know the full damage. Then he walked out, slowly, like someone heading to their own sentencing. The call came on Tuesday morning, 9:14 a.m. sharp. Lucas was already seated at his dining room table, sipping black coffee from the chipped mug he'd carried out of Delacour like a souvenir from a war no one realized he'd won. His phone lit up. Unknown caller. But the area code was familiar. Internal. He let it ring twice, then answered. "Mr. Hartman," came the voice, measured, practiced, but tight around the edges. It wasn't Brent. It wasn't legal. It was the CEO's assistant. "Mr. Marius would like to speak with you." A pause, then a new voice took over. "Lucas, Stephen Marius here. I believe you're aware of the current situation." Lucas didn't respond. The silence was deliberate, strategic. "We're asking for your assistance," the CEO continued, "in resolving a few compliance discrepancies that have surfaced post-transition." Lucas took a slow sip, then spoke, calm as ever. "You're not asking for assistance, you're asking for attestation, and you don't have the legal continuity to make that request." There was a beat of static. "We'd like to bring you back in a consulting capacity," Marius said carefully, "to help us get clean logs submitted and ensure the platform remains compliant. It would be short-term. Just until—" Lucas cut him off. "My terms are as follows." He didn't raise his voice, didn't gloat. He read the list like a grocery order. "First, full indemnity for any and all signatures executed under my credential chain from the date of termination to the present, sealed in writing. Second, a retainer equal to triple my prior salary, billed monthly, guaranteed for 1 year minimum, regardless of duration of engagement. Third, an executive clause naming me as permanent custodian of record on all contracts tied to FDIC DX017 and any future federal compliance initiatives. The role is not revocable without 90 days notice and written consent from the regulator." There was silence on the line. "And fourth," Lucas added, "Brent does not speak to me. He does not email me. He does not CC me. If he so much as breathes in my direction, I walk." The CEO exhaled slowly, like a man accepting gravity. "We'll have it drafted." Lucas nodded once, then hung up without saying goodbye. 3 hours later, a courier arrived at his door with a hard copy contract in a sealed red envelope and a Mont Blanc pen for signature. Inside, the company had folded to every demand. The indemnity clause was airtight. The retainer even included a retroactive signing bonus, and the new org chart showed Lucas reporting directly to General Counsel. No dotted lines, no advisory support nonsense. Just one title: Custodian of Record. Permanent. Lucas signed without comment, returned the envelope, and logged into the system 32 minutes later. His access had already been restored. When the portal loaded, the logs were still intact, untouched. His final file, the one they'd nearly shredded, was marked with a compliance flag, awaiting custodial clearance. He clicked approve, and the system obediently unjammed itself. In the basement war room of Dillicor, a dozen executives exhaled, but none of them realized yet that Lucas hadn't saved them. He'd simply built the toll booth, and now they paid to pass through it. When Lucas walked back into Dillicor, nobody greeted him. There was no welcome banner, no HR tour, no awkward handshakes from the people who used to forget his name in meetings. Just a badge at reception, platinum this time, not blue, and a security escort straight past the ops floor and up to legal, not to a cubicle, not even to an office. They gave him the corner glass conference room on the 12th floor, next to General Counsel's suite. A custom nameplate had already been installed outside the door. L. Hartman, Risk Authority, Federal Contracts. Nobody dared call him Legacy now. He brought nothing with him except that same manila folder and the leather notebook he always carried. The first thing he did, before even logging in, was pull out a black fountain pen, open a fresh legal pad, and begin drafting a new internal policy. Custodial Continuity and Termination Compliance, Exit Protocol. It wasn't a suggestion. It was mandatory. 6 pages long, triple signed, and routed to HR, Legal, Audit, and the Office of the CEO. At the top of page 1, no role holding custodial authority over compliance records shall be terminated without a 60-day transition period, dual signature attestation, and regulator notification. It became policy within 48 hours. Brent didn't show up that day, or the next. Word around legal was that he'd been shifted into a non-operational strategic advisory role, which meant benched with a pretty title and no access. His name vanished from the chain of custody documents. His Slack account went inactive. No one mentioned him again. Lucas didn't ask. Instead, he turned to the backlog. 37 sealed log entries awaiting verification, 5 pending audit inquiries, 2 regulator follow-ups flagged red. He reviewed each one manually, verifying timestamps, metadata hashes, and credential trails. One by one, he authenticated the records, signed the custodial seals, and uploaded clean confirmations to the encrypted federal portal. Then, without ceremony, he granted the regulator direct read-only access to the full trail. No notes, no explanations, just pure, validated data. 3 days later, Dillicor received a single-line response from the Federal Contract Authority. Compliance status restored. No further action at this time. The relief inside the C-suite was so thick you could have bottled it. There was no party, no email blast, just a quiet, collective exhale, and the sudden realization that every department was now building their process maps around Lucas's policies, the same ones Brent had mocked as bureaucratic glue. By Friday, a fresh org chart was released. Under the legal division sat a new vertical, Risk Authority, Federal Oversight. Only one name lived there. Lucas never said a word about it. He just slid his notebook closed, tapped his badge against the compliance vault, and returned to work. 3 months later, the regulator returned. Not in a panic, not with threats, just a scheduled audit, the kind most companies treat like a fire drill, rehearsed, performative, desperate to impress. But this time, Dillicor was different. There were no binders hastily compiled the night before, no clean desk operations, no late-night war rooms. Just a calm itinerary, a clean compliance trail, and one quiet man already seated in the audit room before anyone else had arrived. Lucas didn't dress up. Same black jacket, same pen, same face like stone. He had no laptop, just his notebook and the system access panel behind him, already unlocked, already authenticated. He nodded once as the regulator entered, then swiveled the monitor toward her like a chess player showing the next 3 moves already made. She reviewed the logs for 43 minutes in silence, no comments, no corrections. At the end, she slid her glasses off and asked one question, not to Lucas, but to the CEO. "Who's your custodian of record?" Stephen Marius didn't hesitate. He stood, crossed the room, and pointed to the plaque newly mounted on the wall above the secure cabinet. Black metal, brushed finish, 4 words engraved in stark, authoritative serif. Lucas Hartman, compliance sovereign. The regulator nodded once. That'll do. She signed off. No flags, no escalations, not even a follow-up email. Delacour had passed not just by regulation, but by reputation. Word spread quietly across other federal offices. Delacour wasn't just compliant. They were sealed, fortified, untouchable. And Brent? No one asked about him. His name was gone from every protocol. His strategic advisory role quietly dissolved. He'd become a shadow behind a bad decision, too embarrassing to reference and too irrelevant to defend. He wasn't fired exactly, but he no longer existed in any sentence that mattered. Lucas never gloated. He kept the plaque in his eyeline, not for pride, but for precision, because he knew what it really meant. It wasn't about being remembered. It was about making damn sure the system couldn't forget the cost of forgetting him. And when a new intern once asked what compliance sovereign meant, Lucas simply replied without looking up. Mission critical isn't a title. It's the signature you need when it's too late.